taking social for 9th class. Lesson 18, Democracy and Evolving Idea. So democracy requires civil liberties. People can participate in decision making only if they are free to know, discuss from independent opinions and express them, and form association to press for their views. So these are also called civil liberties. Like if the people want to discuss about this, so first of all they should know about this democracy and they can discuss with the others. Okay, however, these rights were not gained by people easily. Government sought to control free speech for association and the right of people to know about public affairs. Most government decisions were kept secret from people. The newspapers and books were censored, and views that went against the government were not allowed to publish. So as we discussed that the news about this public affairs will be the most of the government decisions, everything will be kept secret. They will not publish all these things, it will be censored, and they will not allow to publish it. Many of these rights, for example, were not able to the people of the USSR, even though there was universal right to vote and periodic elections. That is why they had to put up with one party rule for nearly 60 years. Even today, these rights are not available to people in all countries. Restrictions on civil liberties helps government to remain in power. So democracy requires equality. We noted earlier that democracy requires political equality. So as we noted that democracy requires a political equality among everyone, that each person will have one vote. However, for this political equality to be really effective, it also requires equality of social and economic status. So if the society is divided into highly unequal classes of rich and poor, or high caste and low caste, then the political equality will become meaningless. Okay, those with higher status and wealth can easily force the rest to vote according to their choice. In a large number of families, and male heads of family decide for whom everyone in the family, including women, should be voted. So the head of the family will decide to whom the family members, including the women, should vote. The head of the family will decide. So democracy requires free and fair elections. So as we discussed previously, that democracy, they need a free and fair election. There should not be any manipulating or anything like that in the elections. So democracy requires respect for law and minority opinion. While democracy implies a popularly elected government, it does not mean rule of popular leaders who do what their supporters want them to do. All democratic governments need to abide by laws and allow independent functioning of the judiciary and executive officers as laid down in the law. So democracies also need to safeguard the interest of those who hold opinion contrary to the majority of the people. Their right to hold those views, propagate them, and persuade people to accept them to be respected even if the majority does not agree with them. The biggest challenge before democracy is to deal with the people who hold opinions against democracy itself. Those who think that democracy has to be replaced by some kind of dictatorship, those who believe that power should belong only to a particular class of people of a particular religion or race. So should they be allowed to propagate their views? Both these aspects give us another feature of democracy. A democratic government rules within limits set by constitutional law and citizen rights. So often democracy is taken to mean the rule of the majority. So if in any country there will be people of diverse views and cultures. So difference of opinions and bond to arise. So what is the democratic way to settle such differences? So in every culture there will be a difference in the people. So how to get rid of this? What is the democratic way to such differences? We often use the method of deciding by majority. That is, if voting is done, the viewpoint that gets maximum support will be accepted by all. So as the elections will be done, the maximum number of votes whoever will get will be elected as the ruling party. While this is useful in many simple situations, it can be very divisive in complex situations which involve whole communities or classes of people. A simple majoritarian approach may lead to alienation of minority communities. In such situation, it may be more useful to take an inclusive approach which accommodates the needs of both the majority and the minority people. Let us look at two important examples in this regard. Belgium and Sri Lanka. Belgium is a small country in Europe. Of the country's total population is 59% lives in the Flemish region and speak Dutch language. So 59% of the population is there, and from that the most of the people speak Dutch language. About 40% people in the Wallonian region and speak French. So 59% speak Dutch language and the 40% people speak French language. Remaining 1% of the Belgians speak German. So remaining 1% will speak German language. In the capital city, Brussels, 80% people speak French while 20% are Dutch. You can see the differences like in the of the European, the Belgium is a European Belgium country. It is like 59% speak Dutch and 40% as French and 1% as German. Whereas in Brussels city, 80% speak French and 20% Dutch speaking. The minority French-speaking community was relatively rich and powerful. This was resented by the Dutch-speaking community. This led to tension between the Dutch-speaking and French-speaking communities during the 1950s and 1960s. The tension between the two communities was more acute in Brussels. Brussels presented a special problem. The Dutch-speaking people constituted a major in the country but a minority in the capital. Now about Sri Lanka, it is an island nation to the south of India. Sri Lanka too has a diverse population. The majority social groups and the Sinhala speakers 74% and the Tamil speakers are 18%. Most of the Sinhala speaking people are Buddhist, while most of the Tamils are Hindus or Muslims. Should the majority communities view prevail in these two countries? Now let us look at what happened in both of the countries. Majoritarianism in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, post its independence in 1948, the leaders of Sinhala community sought to secure dominance over government by virtue of their majority. As a result, the democratically elected government adopted a series of majoritarian measures to establish Sinhala supremacy. Sinhala was made the only official language disregarding Tamil. The governments followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants for jobs. A new constitution stipulated that the state shall protect the forest Buddhism. All these government measures coming one after the other gradually increased the feeling of alienation among the Sri Lankan Tamils. As a result, the relations between the Sinhala and the Tamil communities strained over time. The Sri Lankan Tamils launched parties and struggled for equal status. Autonomy to provinces populated by the Tamils was repeatedly denied. By 1980, several political organizations were formed demanding an independent Tamil Elam state in northern and eastern parts of Sri Lanka. The distrust between the two communities turned into widespread conflict. It soon turned into a civil war as Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam LTTE, an extremist organization, established independent rule over some provinces inhabited by Tamils. In the final war, the Sri Lankan army defeated the LTTE. LTTE means Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam. It also established a brutal control over these provinces, killing and uprooting thousands of Tamil people. So many families were forced to leave the country as refugees and many more lost their livelihoods. Prior to the civil war, Sri Lanka had an excellent record of economic development, education and health. But the civil war was caused a terrible setback to the social, cultural and economic life of the country. So accommodation in Belgium is the Belgian leaders took a different path. They recognized the existence of regional differences and cultural diversities. Between 1970 and 1993, they amended their constitution 4 times so as to work out an arrangement that would enable everyone to live together within the same country. The arrangement they worked out is different from any other country and is very innovative. Here are some of the elements of the Belgian model. Constitution prescribes that the number of Dutch and French speaking ministers shall be equal in the central government. Some special laws require the support of majority of members from each linguistic group. Thus, no single community can make decisions unilaterally. Many powers of the central government have been given to state government of the two regions of the country. The state governments are not subordinate to the central government. So Brussels has a separate government in which both the communities have equal representations. The French-speaking people accepted equal representation in Brussels because the Dutch-speaking community has accepted equal representation in the central government. Apart from the central and the state government, there is a third kind of government, that is community government, and it is elected by people belonging to one language community. So the community government is elected by the people who belong to one community, one language community. Dutch, French and German speaking, no matter where they live. This government has the power regarding cultural, educational and language related issues. You might find the Belgian model very complicated, but these arrangements have worked well so far. They help to avoid civil strife between the two major communities and a possible division of the country on linguistic lines. When many countries of Europe came together to form the European Union, Brussels were chosen as its headquarters. This was a great honor for Belgium because of the faith placed in it by the European community and an acknowledgement of Belgium's ability for fair play and justice. So what do we learn from these two stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka? Both are democracies. Both the countries are democracies. Yes, yet they dealt with the question of power sharing differently. In Belgium, the leaders have realized that the unity of the country is possible only by respecting the feelings and interests of different communities and regions. Such a realization resulted in mutually acceptable arrangements for sharing power. Sri Lanka shows us a contrasting example. It shows us that if a majority community wants to force its dominance over others and refuse to share power, it can undermine the unity of the country and force the country back several hundred years with internal conflicts and civil wars. So democracy stands much superior to any other form of government in promoting dignity and freedom of the individual. Every individual wants to receive respect from fellow beings. Often conflicts arises among individuals because some feel that they are not treated with due respect. The passion for respect and freedom are the basic of democracy. Democracies throughout the world have recognized this at least in principle. This has been achieved in various degrees in various democracies for societies which have been built over ago on the basis of subordination and domination. It is not a simple matter to recognize or that all individuals are equal. Take the case of dignity of women. Most social societies across the world were historically male-dominated societies. So in the most of the societies in the world historically, males are dominating. So long struggle by women have created some sensitive today that respect to and equal treatment of women are necessary ingredients of the democracy society. So after a lot of struggle, women have created some sensitivity. Today they get the respect and equal rights from the society. That does not mean that women are actually always treated with respect. But once the principle is recognized, it becomes easier for women to wage a struggle against what is now acceptable, legally and morally. In a non-democratic setup, this unacceptability would not have legal basics because the principles of individuals' freedom and dignity would not have the legal and moral force there. The same is true of caste inequalities. Democracy in India has strengthened the claims of the disadvantaged and discriminated caste for equal status and equal opportunity. However, there are instances of caste-based inequalities and atrocities even now, but these lack the moral and legal foundations. Perhaps it is this recognition that makes ordinary citizens value their democratic lives. The expectation from democracy also functions as the criteria for judging any democracy country. So what is most distinctive about democracy is that its examination never gets over. As democracy passes one test, it produces another test. So as people get some benefits of democracy, they ask for more and want to make democracy even better. That is why when we ask people about the way democracy functions, they always come up with more expectations and many complaints. The fact that people are complaining is itself a testimony to the success of democracy. It shows that people have developed awareness and the ability to expect and look critically at power holders and the high and the mighty. A public expression of dissatisfaction with democracy shows the success of the democratic project. It transforms people from the status of a subject into that of a citizen. So most individuals today believe that their vote makes a difference in the way the government is run and their own self-interest. So children, now it's the time for you all to write the question answers for this lesson. So write all the question answers children which is given in your textbook. Read the lesson and write the question answers. First you will have to read the lesson and then write the question answers by your own. So if not possible, you can refer the workbook. Before that, you try to write it by your own. Okay children, till then take care children.